with officials of the Nigerian High Commission who have since tested positive to COVID-19. And at last, Taliban have overrun Kabul, taking over the presidential palace. Stability Project Serap has asked President Muhammadu Buhari to, as a matter of urgency, redirect the proposed 4.8 billion naira of public funds to monitor WhatsApp messages and phone calls to improve and pay off some salaries of the striking resident doctors and enhance services in public healthcare centers across the country. In an open letter to the President, Serap argues that redirecting the proposed funds will be consistent with the constitutional oath of office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The statement adds that redirecting the funds to pay off the doctors will promote efficient, honest and legal spending of public funds. According to Serap, to monitor WhatsApp calls and conversations is an interference with privacy targeted to repress the exercise of the right of freedom of expression, which will lead to violations of other fundamental human rights. The federal government had earmarked funds for WhatsApp intercept solution and Thuraya interception solution, which sparked public outcry and controversy across the country. A former Emir of Kano, Muhammadu Sanusi, has attributed the rising insecurity in the country to corruption and poor economic policies of government. The former Emir blamed the current and previous administrations for policies that he says have now kept the citizens impoverished. Sanusi, who made the statement at a colloquium organized in his honor in Kaduna State to mark his 60th birthday, also insists that government must do away with fuel subsidy, which it describes as unsustainable.
That the federal government's public debt came to about 33 trillion naira as at the first quarter of 2021 is no news. What is news, however, is the fact that the government has also continued to show interest in seeking help from external sources in spite of the rising debt level, which it describes as sustainable. At the moment, the nation's debt to GDP ratio is about 19%, as against the 50% recommended by the World Bank and IMF for a country with its population and size. The 33 trillion naira total debt stock includes promissory notes in the sum of 940 billion naira issued to settle the inherited arrears of the federal government to state governments, oil marketing companies, exporters and local contractors. A look at the total public debt stock of 32.916 trillion naira as of December 31, 2020 shows that the increase in the debt stock was marginal at 0.58%. Further analysis of the public debt stock shows that the increase was in the domestic debt stock, which grew by 2.11% from 20.21 trillion naira in December 2020 to 20.637 trillion naira as of December 31, 2021. Further analysis of the public debt stock shows that the increase was in the domestic debt stock, which grew by 2.11% from 20.21 trillion naira in December 2020 to 20.637 trillion naira as at March 31, 2021. Figures from the Debt Management Office shows that a total of 1 trillion naira was spent in debt servicing for both domestic and foreign debt in the first quarter of 2021, indicating an increase of 35% spent in the first quarter of 2020 to service debt. A breakdown of the sum, considering the nation's population of over 200 million people, means that an average individual in Nigeria, based on equal allocation, owes an aggregate of 164,000 naira. Another worrisome trajectory is the fact that the federal government still plans to acquire more loans between 2021 and 2024 to the tune of 19.6 trillion naira, stressing that the loans will be used in the provision of infrastructure. The argument in the public place is that debt service figures constitute a huge drain on the nation's revenue, accounting for over 30% of expenditure in the annual budget. While Nigerians will be watching to see how events will turn up in the coming days, the government says they will continue to pursue an increase in revenue generation to cater for the growing challenges the nation is confronted with.
The International Development Association, the IDA, is part of the World Bank that provides support to the poorest countries in the world. This week, the IDA released its audited financial statement. Tonight, Channels Television's information consultant Babajide Ogusanwo is here to discuss this latest report on the state of global debt and Nigeria's external borrowing position. It's great to have you on the News at 10 again, Babajide.
Good evening, Ayo.
All right, so let's get right into it. What is the status of Nigeria's debt at this moment in time, especially regarding funding from the IDA?
There are several ways you can look at debt, Ayo. But I'd like to start from something interesting. You know, there are three things that you always have more of than you know. The first, enemies. The second, sins. And finally, debt, Ayo. Speaking about debt, there's some good news and some bad news regarding the latest audited financial statements from the International Development Association. Let's start with the good news. The good news is the IDA did not state that Nigeria is a high debt risk country. The fact is, in page 40 of their report, what they clearly stated was that Nigeria is among the top 10 countries that they have borrowed money to. Number 1 on that list is India with $22 billion. Nigeria is on that list, number 5, $11.7 billion. Even on that list, you have Ghana in position 9. Ghana has borrowed money from the IDA. So good news is Nigeria is not classified as a high debt risk nation. Here's the bad news, Ayo. The bad news is the International Development Association only gives money to the poorest countries in the world. The 74 poorest countries are the ones that are eligible to get money from the IDA. The bad news is Nigeria has been on that list for too long. Nigeria needs to get off the list of being eligible to get money from the IDA. And that should be our goal. Our goal should be, how should we move away from becoming eligible for such a loan to being a country that even provides loan to poor and other developing countries.
So what are the facts about our external borrowing trend? How will you summarize it? Because, Nigeria is seen as, we try to call Nigeria the giant of Africa, a big brother to other African countries. But with this picture you've painted, how will you summarize it?
So for the layman, let's call this external borrowing 101. Three things. The first is Nigeria's total debt as Nigeria. The first is we owe 33 trillion naira. The second is who owes that money. The fact shows that 80% of that money is being owed by the federal government. And the third is 60% of these monies are denominated, monies that we owe are denominated in naira. The 40% is denominated in foreign currency. So that's what we'll say external borrowing 101. But what's more important and why this discussion on debt continues is because of the trends in debt, Ayo. And the best way to look at it is not just look at 2015 and 2020, is to look at what happened in 2010, look at what happened in 2015, 5 years after, and look at what happened in 2020. So I want us to take a look at the patterns on Nigeria's borrowing trend. And if we take a look at that, it is self-explanatory. We can clearly see what has gone on in the last 10 years. As at December 2010, Nigeria had an external debt position of 690 billion naira. 5 years after, our external debt position had gone higher to 2.1 trillion naira. So as at December 2015, we owed the equivalent of 2.1 trillion naira. As at December 2020, our external debts had grown to 12.7 trillion naira. So why is this important? This is important because between December 2015 to December 2020, our external debt has grown by 500%, point one. The second thing is the federal government owes approximately 80% of this external debt. And to the final point, within this period, 2015 to 2020, where Nigeria's external debt has grown by over 500%, the federal government's revenue, Ayo, has grown by only 16%, from 3.4 trillion naira to 3.9 trillion naira. So yes, the International Development Association has not classified Nigeria as a high debt risk nation. That is the fact. But the fact is also that Nigeria's external debt in the last 5 years has grown by 500%, while the federal government's revenue has grown by only 16%. But you know what a wise man once said? he who robs Peter to pay Paul can always count on the support of Paul.
So who are the other agencies and countries that are lending to Nigeria with this picture you've painted?
We've got Nigeria's collecting
And is there
Eurobonds.
pressure on Nigeria really from all these?
So let's take a look at these other countries. So Nigeria's external debt position based on the report from the Debt Management Organization shows that today we owe $33 billion in dollar terms. Yes, the IDA still counts as the number one funding source. We have Eurobonds, but there's China. And China is coming on big. We now owe China with money, loans outstanding to China, $3.4 billion. Less than half a decade ago, it was just about $1.3 billion. But again, from China, these loans are not coming for free. We've seen Nigeria importing a lot of equipment from China, and we're not really exporting to China. So we've seen more money coming from China, but we've also seen our trade deficit with China currently standing at over 4 trillion naira because we're importing much more goods from China than we're exporting.
Babajide Ogunsanya would like to end it there. Thank you so much for your
In
thoughts.
the final analysis, I'd like to tell you that he who borrows gold and currency can repay back. But those that borrow kindness are the ones
Very well then, Babajide Ogunsanya, our consultant there, taking a look at Nigeria's debt profile. Still ahead on the news at 10, President Buhari goes into isolation after coming in contact with officials in the UK who have tested positive to COVID-19. Please stay with us.
Stay connected to the world with Channels TV Podcast and get all the trending stories. Simply log on to channelstv.com, click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere.
Military President General Ibrahim Babangida says he has been proved right by time over his decision to annul the June 12, 1993 presidential election. The general, who turns 80 this week, told Channels Television's Ladi Akeredoluwale on our current affairs program Newsnight that Nigerians were impatient to await the events that unfolded after the annulment. General Babangida also says that the military coup he predicted occurred and that it lasted more than 5 years.
It's a decision we took. I kept on saying I had to take that decision. I did that to the best of my knowledge, in the interest of the country. I did the right thing. I can sit back and say, okay, some of the things that I said manifested after I had left. You had a coup. And that coup lasted for 5 years, right? There is impatience in you. When I say you, I mean Nigerian. Impatience. I drew up a program for you to have an election in 5 to 6 months after the interim government, right? So that you can have an election in November. We agreed that the same candidates can go back to the people to say that, to seek their mandate to run again. The same people. I didn't bring anybody from Mina. I didn't bring anybody from Niger State or something like that. The same people could have run. This was agreed even by the politicians, your so-called leaders at that time. But tyranny of the elite, they said, we are tired of election. Somebody said, okay, you are tired of election, I will give you time to rest. Took over the government and ran you for 5 good years.
For the full interview with General Ibrahim Babangida, do watch Newsnight tomorrow, Monday, August the 16th at 9 p.m. right here on Channels Television. Meanwhile, it has come to light that it was ex-military President Ibrahim Babangida who asked former President Dr. Goodluck Jonathan to sit on the empty chair of the president created by the absence of then-President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. A billionaire businessman, Mr. Femi Otedola, revealed this as part of snippets of a book on business lessons scheduled for release in November this year. Mr. Otedola said it was General Babangida who told him to tell Dr. Jonathan to seal the vacuum and reduce tension created by Alhaji Yar'Adua's absence due to ill health by sitting in the presidential chair at the Federal Executive Council meeting. Writing on the need for entrepreneurs to engage with political authorities in one of the chapters of the book, Mr. Otedola maintains that such a relationship will benefit the country. For full details of this story, please visit our website, channelstv.com. As the rainy season continues, not less than 2,000 houses and 5,000 farmlands have been destroyed in flood in Kirfi local government area of Bauchi State, as confirmed by Governor Bala Mohammed. Residents of the community have been displaced and they are calling on government to intensify efforts to avert future occurrence. Governor Mohammed has, however, constituted a committee to take inventory of losses after a visit to the affected areas.
Some residents in Kirfi local government area of Bauchi State are now internally displaced persons after being sacked from their homes by flood. This primary school is where over 200 displaced residents seek temporary shelter. The devastation cuts across many villages, and most houses have been leveled in the ground and their belongings buried in the mud. Governor Bala Mohammed's visits to Kirfi gives the people hope as they speak about their plight.
Muna fata kamar yadda kake magance dukkan wasu matsaloli na jihar Bauchi da gwamnonin ba suka gagara yi, mu ma muna fata wannan matsala ta ambaliyar ruwa da ta kai shekara 10 tana faruwa a wannan ƙasa, muna fata kai ne silanta da zaka magance mana ita domin mu samu sawaba al'umma mu su tsira.
The State Emergency Management Agency examines the situation as it embarks on an assessment.
Mai girma gwamnan jihar Bauchi ya ba mu izinin mu kawo muku shinkafa buhu 600. Mun kawo kuma yana nan. Da masara buhu 300. Kuma wannan taimako ne na gaggawa kafin Allah da sauran kayayyaki da su zo daga bayan Allah da.
Governor Mohammed debunked rumors that lives were lost as he assures residents of the community of immediate relief.
Kirfi to commiserate with you over this monumental loss of properties and of course with no loss of life. As a government, we are always driven by science and technology. By planning, we will institute a committee to enumerate all those who lost and what they have lost and what we stand to give you in terms of relief. I will form a technical committee that will design and enumerate in terms of engineering so that we will be able to find engineering solution to the perennial problem that is bedeviling Kirfi.
As residents continue to experience torrential rainfall, the community reiterates the need for the government to intensify efforts to avert future occurrence, just as the government warns against building on flood path. Hajara Aliyu, Channels Television News.
The federal government of Nigeria has commenced the implementation of the Treasury Single Account System for Transforming Irrigation Management in Nigeria Project Irrigation Schemes. Now, the Trimming Project is an initiative of the Federal Ministry of Water Resources, supported by the World Bank, to help improve access to irrigation and drainage services for farmers.
This is a consultative meeting on the implementation of the World Bank-funded Transforming Irrigation Management in Nigeria for farmers in Sokoto State. The meeting is for the development of modalities for a new regime of irrigation service fee collection and administration. The project provides technical assistance to farmers to assume responsibility for the ownership of the irrigation projects.
In particular, the TA was carefully designed to promote participatory irrigation management by empowering the farming community around TRIMI project irrigation schemes to assume responsibility for ownership of the irrigation and drainage systems around their plots, including financial and administrative accountability thereof.
Agricultural system in Nigeria is predominantly rain-fed, and this makes the system vulnerable to seasonal variability, which affects the livelihood of farmers. The project is expected to assist farmers make significant contribution to food sufficiency and food security.
We want to see the possibility of farmers managing these irrigation facilities, collecting fees, and even limiting part of that fees to the government and using part of it to manage these irrigation facilities, because we want to ensure better management, we want to ensure efficiency, in terms of usage of this.
The 5 irrigation projects involved in the scheme are Bakolori, Middle Rima, Corner River, Hadejia Valley and Dadinkowa irrigation schemes, all situated in the northwest region.
The National Examinations Council has procured 8,000 biometric devices to improve the efficiency of examinations to meet global standards. This was made known by the Registrar of NECO, Ibrahim Bushishi, while monitoring the conduct of an ongoing examinations in Yola, Adamawa State. Mr. Bushishi notes that the Council has about 18,000 centers across the country, with each center having its biometric devices that will enhance its work.
We have about 18,000 centers, okay? So far, we have been able to purchase more than 8,000 biometric devices. We did that when the centers were just about 16,000. So we have additional 2,000 centers. So we are making effort to make sure that in each center we have a biometric system where we capture a student with a fingerprint and also the pictures. And we want to ensure that as time goes on, even the statement of results will come out with the pictures of the student. And the OMR answer sheet, we want to also customize it in a way that students' pictures appear, so that you know this is an OMR for this particular candidate. Though it's only the picture that is not there now, but it is a customized one. Okay, so there are so many things we are looking at. We are looking at the possibility of also computerizing our offices and making sure that there are security features in all the state's offices, where at the headquarters we will be able to monitor what goes on in all the state offices.
The federal government has warned that the human capacity gap of the country will continue to expand adversely, leading to more low economic growth if young people remain out of school. This warning was given by the Minister of Education, Adamu Adamu, at the end of the 65th meeting of the National Council of Education held in Jalingo, the Taraba State capital. He also expressed dismay over the ranking of the country as one with the highest number of out-of-school children in the world.
Data from the United Nations Children Education Fund, UNICEF, shows that Nigeria accounts for 1 in every 5 out-of-school children in the world and 45% of out-of-school children in West Africa. According to UNICEF, about 10.5 million children are out of school in Nigeria, even though basic education is officially free and compulsory.
National Council on Education.
Both federal and state governments are determined to reduce this number, hence the need for this 65th National Council of Education meeting.
Education is the right of every child, and we must all do our best to ensure that every child is educated. Eradicating out-of-school children phenomenon is a collective responsibility which cannot be left only to government. Hence, families and the society must mobilize to support this goal.
For the Minister of Education, the eradication of the out-of-school children phenomenon is possible only if a total overhaul is implemented.
Provision of a safe and secure environment for learners and teachers. Availability of professional teachers. Proximity of schools to pupils and students. A strong political will on the part of all of us to invest in education. Provision of adequate funding mechanism.
The Taraba State government says the ranking of UNICEF indicating that the state is one of those with the highest number of out-of-school children is not far-fetched. The state is regarded as a safe haven for internally displaced persons who flee insurgency from other states of the Northeast and the Republic of Cameroon, which invariably leads to poverty.
This phenomenon will reduce Nigeria to a hub of vulnerable children with no access to quality education, thus rendering them susceptible to being recruited into all manner of social vices earlier mentioned.
As long as insecurity persists, reducing the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria will remain a challenge. Workable solutions are supposed to be arrived at during this meeting on how to deal with the situation, considering the country's security realities.
The Niger Delta Development Commission, the NDDC, has promised to pay all counterpart funding to enable the takeoff of the Livelihood Family Enterprise project as soon as possible to improve enterprises in the Niger Delta region. The interim administrator of the NDDC, Mr. Effiong Aqua, made this known during an interactive meeting of stakeholders involved in the project.
This gathering is an interactive meeting among the Niger Delta Development Commission, representatives of the federal government and IFAD. They're meeting with beneficiaries of the NDDC-funded states of Imo, Rivers and Akwa Ibom states in the Livelihood Family Enterprise project.
That let nobody have any doubt in his mind.
The essence of this initiative, according to the NDDC, is to fulfill its commitment to ensuring job creation, enhancing food security, and improving the agriculture sector in the region.
You are lucky. The people in the other states, they are grappling with those issues now. But when it comes to these three states that NDDC is going to directly fund, all these things are going to be on the joint board. We are going to have them, MPC, and all the people involved. We tell all our partners. So we must realistically move forward so that we are not doing this just to fulfill all righteousness.
About 12 billion naira has been budgeted for the program in the three states, which will be subject to recommendation of the National Assembly and approval by the President.
NDDC will pay every couple of his financial commitments. In a way, I'm sure at the end of the day, the three states may even be glad for it.
The Directorate of Agriculture and Fisheries, who is the chief pilot of this program for the Commission, is also doing all consistently in touch with the interim administrator and the Honorable Minister of National Delta Affairs as per this program.
The National Project Coordinator for the scheme is confident of the benefits it portends for the region.
We are concerned because of the significance and importance of this project to this region and to these three states in particular.
Our hope will not be dashed again.
Some participants express high hope over the benefits of the project, lamenting the delay in takeoff in their states when the 6 other states have started benefiting.
I foresee a process where the project will impact the lives of the rural dwellers, which is the major mission and vision of this project in the NDDC or Niger Delta area.
The management of the NDDC is upbeat that many things will start to look up with the conclusion of the forensic audit exercise.
President Muhammadu Buhari, alongside members of his delegation, have gone into isolation after a 2-week trip to London, United Kingdom. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Mr. Garba Shehu, who affirmed or confirmed this to Channels Television today, noted that in accordance with the NCDC guidelines for international travel, The president and members of his delegation are required to go into isolation. Members of the president's delegation to the UK include the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, Minister of State for Education, Chukwuemeka Nwajubia, Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ambassador Ahmed Rufai Abubakar, and the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Mungono. After reports of attacks on some Nigerian-owned businesses in South Africa's Mpumalanga province, Nigeria's Consul General Mr. Abdulmalik Ahmed has paid a visit to the area. Accompanied by members of the Nigerian Citizens Association, the Consul General met with the provincial police chiefs where he presented the concerns of Nigerians there. The repeated attacks are being blamed on members of the Minibus Taxi Association who accuse Nigerians for fueling some of the criminal activities being recorded.
Nigeria's Consul General's first stop was the Mpumalanga Provincial Office of the South Africa Police Service to discuss the alleged continuous attacks on Nigerian nationals and their businesses by members of the local transport sector.
We had reports that a certain group of people here, a certain group of stakeholders in this community, in this province, are bent on taking the laws into their hands.
Chinedu Omenazu, a Nigerian restaurant business owner, claims he was attacked by some minibus taxi drivers in Nelspruit for trying to have mediatory talks with the taxi association leaders.
After we left the office, coming down, a group of taxi drivers already on downstairs waiting for me. So no, they already had that there's somebody called G's on top there. They were all of them, they wanted to beat me up.
Emeka Frank, who owns a clothing store, says after his own attack, his attempt to open a case was allegedly sabotaged by the police officers on duty.
It took over 2 hours. The police, the whole police there, the lady there, she didn't entertain my report.
Responding to all the complaints, the head of Detective Section, Brigadier William Mahlangu, said the country is tackling all kinds of crime irrespective of the nationality of the perpetrators, and the taxi associations are part of those who are impatient with the South Africa Police Service's approach to handling situations. He also pointed out that some Nigerian citizens are not entirely blameless.
The issue of drugs, which that one we need to look at it, and the second one is that they are very good in fighting the police, and the community as such is now not happy with the police.
Deputy Provincial Police Commissioner Brigadier Butsutsu Mukangwe directed that the case numbers of the victims be brought forward to the provincial office.
We promise that we will be available for you all the time, and we will take care of this. Let's get the case numbers, and people should not be afraid to testify.
We are sorry over the loss of the Nigerian over this incident, and then we are going to follow up and ensure that appropriate investigation is done and the case is prosecuted so that the culprits can be brought to book.
At a Nigerian town hall meeting held afterwards, the Consul General ended his visit appealing to Nigerians in the province to avoid any illegal activities that could tarnish their image and that of the country.
The U.S. Pentagon intends to send 1,000 more troops to help with evacuation efforts in the Afghan capital, Kabul. 3,000 were dispatched earlier this week. It comes as the Taliban claim they are now in control of all district centers in Kabul, and they have ruled out a transitional government and say they plan to declare an Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan.
A lot has happened in the last few hours in Afghanistan, shocking the diplomatic community and the country's neighbors, as Taliban forces boldly enter the capital, Kabul, as U.S. evacuated citizens as quickly as possible. The militants now claim they have taken control of the presidential palace, as well as 11 of Kabul's district centers, with a promise they're there to ensure safety. All commercial flights out of the international airport have been suspended, and according to a NATO official, only militant aircraft are allowed to operate. Amidst the takeover, the U.S. moved its embassy to the airport. It later advised U.S. citizens still in the country in need of evacuation to register online. French Ambassador David Martineau posted a video of himself leaving the former Green Zone, where government buildings, residences, and foreign embassies are housed. The French embassy, which has been moved closer to the airport, will remain operational, according to the government, for the evacuation of all French citizens who might be left in the country. The UK says most of its embassy's staff have already been evacuated. However, the ambassador and a small number of embassy staff will remain in the country to help British nationals evacuate. And as blame falls on the United States' timing on troop withdrawal, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken defended President Joe Biden's actions, saying the idea that waiting would have caused a better outcome was fiction.
We inherited a deadline negotiated by the previous administration. That deadline was May 1st. And the idea that we could have maintained the status quo beyond May 1st if the president had decided to stay, I think is a fiction.
The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says no one should bilaterally recognise the Taliban as the government in Afghanistan, as a new administration will be declared shortly.
We don't want anybody bilaterally recognising the Taliban. We want a united position amongst all the like-minded, as far as we can get one, so that we do whatever we can to prevent Afghanistan lapsing back into being a breeding ground for terror.
Meanwhile, talks with the Taliban and government representatives in Qatar have been overshadowed by the situation back home, where it is safe to say for now, the Taliban is in charge.
Time now for some sports news. In the Premier League, Tottenham Hotspur shrugged off the absence of Harry Kane, their skipper, to give Nuno Espirito Santo a dream start as manager as Son Heung-min's strike beat reigning champions Man City 1-0 earlier today. Pep Guardiola's men pinned in the home side for the opening 10 minutes, but were left to ruin not taking their chances as they slipped to a fourth defeat in 4 visits to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium without scoring. Meanwhile, West Ham United twice came from behind to get their Premier League campaign off to a good start by beating Newcastle United 4-2 in a hugely entertaining match at St James's Park earlier today. The Hammers trailed 2-1 at half-time but staged a remarkable fight back in the second half with goals from Said Barama, Thomas Souček and Mikhail Antonio. 24 Nigerian athletes have departed Abuja for Nairobi, Kenya earlier today to participate at the Under-20 World Junior Athletics Championship scheduled for August the 17th through to the 22nd. They are to be joined by 4 others from the United States. And the main news again. Dusk to dawn curfew has been imposed on Jos North, Bassa and Jos South local government areas of Plateau State, and troops have arrested 21 suspects already in connection with the attack on the Rukuba Road. And that's it on the news at 10. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun. Many thanks for watching. From all of us here is good night and stay safe.